Hello, welcome back. So this is my recap discussing basically all of 2022, just some of the highlights of things that have happened this year, witchy and just life and things. This is a really popular thing a lot of people do this time of the year, so I'm just jumping on the bandwagon. Here's what I did in this year. So my main YouTube goal that I had for this year was that I wanted to try to do a scheduled upload. And it initially started on Fridays. I was just going to post every Friday no matter what. That now is like such an easy goal, but at the time that was so difficult. And now I can sit here happily and be like, look at me, I've been uploading pretty much every day for half the year. But at that time it was super rough, and so I've managed to do that this whole year. But I just started with that. Every Friday I would have an upload, and if I did other ones it was a bonus video, which I'll still probably continue into the new year. We might have bonus videos because I've realized that I can't read a lot of the books I want to before the end of the year, and so I was like, you know what, we'll have bonus videos spontaneously when I'm like, oh, I finished a book early but I already have the rest of the month planned. Here we go, here's a bonus video kind of thing, which you'll hear all of my plans of what I'm planning to do in a video in a couple of days, but for now, just know that I will have bonus videos still happening occasionally. But at the beginning of the year, it was really, I need to upload every week, and mostly it was just the Rune series, which I did finish, and I was just trying so hard to do that, and now, at the end of the year, I've been posting consistently, for the most part, every day for the past 6 months. Crap happens though, and next year I'm hoping to avoid that by being ahead, hence every other day, because then I can get ahead. I only have to record about 15 videos a month instead of 30. It was also during this year that I really began my journey working with the Norse gods. Odin had walked into my life in the end of 2020 and Thor had come into my life in 2018, but up until now, this year, those were the only two, and I was like, I don't know, feels kind of weird, I don't know why you're here. And now I'm actively working with a lot from that pantheon. I've been doing the 13 Days of Yule, mostly with all the Norse gods, and, well, not all of them, but, I mean, 13 of them is quite a big chunk to work with. Well, I guess 12, because I do have the Morrigan still, but regardless. This was the first time I ever really felt compelled to start to learn about an entire pantheon, and not just one particular deity, and that's been really interesting to have a super huge shift in dynamics of my craft from one or two deities to now a plethora of them, and how they work together, and how you still have your main ones but now you also have other ones you go to for different things. It's a really interesting concept to work on, and I have never had that before, and that started this year. Mostly the thing was that I had the introduction into the mythology, and I think that's the biggest thing, is when you can find something that really speaks to your interest in the pantheon and makes you connect with all of them on differing levels. That for me was such a huge game changer, because I've read myths for years, obviously. We read about them and learn about them in school, and it just had never clicked. And then I read Neil Gaiman's book and it was like, oh my god, this is probably what the ancestors felt when you would hear about the gods. Oh, this is how it's supposed to feel when you hear about the myths. Because honestly, it just feels dusty and old, and from an old library that you have to pay thousands of dollars to be able to have an access key to get into. I don't love old myths, they're just really boring and obviously recorded by people who didn't even believe in it anyways. And so to have a book that's written in a way where it's interesting and fun and kind of modern but kind of not, I loved that book. And I felt like it was such a good representation for the myths, and it got me interested, and I've never had that before. And then really the biggest shift of my existence was in June, when I was abruptly fired from my day job. I haven't talked about it too much on here, but tiny bit of backstory, because it is the recap video. I had no write-ups, I had no warnings, I had absolutely no idea that anything was wrong. She just, I think, was jealous because I was getting married right after she was getting divorced, and she just is going through a midlife crisis, and I just happened to be the target at that time. And so out of the blue, she fired me, and honestly, it's for the best. I was planning on quitting at some point. I just kind of hoped that the YouTube Patreon book royalties would have been a little further along before I did that, but it's fine. We did our budgeting and realized that I can work on this full time and we can survive. Not easily, but we can survive off of my husband's paycheck and my mom's paycheck because we live at home, because the idea of moving out is like such a foreign concept. We're never leaving, and it's fine because, like, honestly, as my mom ages, we'll just end up taking care of her, and it's not a huge deal. But for other people, that'd be the end of the world, but for us, it's fine. So yeah, we're able to survive off of my husband's paycheck, which means I was able to move to doing all of this full time. So my uploads went from once a week to pretty much every day, and I really vamped up my book reviews, which is one of the most popular things on my channel. I've learned that I don't need to be the Witchcraft 101 channel. It is so saturated of content, and honestly, I'm okay not talking about it. Like, I don't know what I would add to that conversation that hasn't already been said. Instead, book reviews. I'm doing pretty good with that. I post occasionally other stuff, but for the most part, book reviews have been like the hit. When I look at my analytics, it is book reviews that are thriving. And so, like, that was an interesting thing to learn about my channel, of like, what is my target audience? And honestly, mine's just like, I guess we like books and like just chit-chatting about just not necessarily the beginner stuff. I don't need to tell you what the element of earth is about and how to connect to the element of air and how to cast a circle per se. Like, I don't have to talk on those things every single time. Like, there are other channels that are doing that, and instead mine's more like, let's just assume that like we're beyond the basics and you're just like meandering through like, you got the basics down, now what? Kind of thing, and like learning different books and stuff. So it's been really interesting to finally have like a thing that works for my channel, and to see where the analytics are actually working and where they're not, and what gets like interaction from people and what doesn't. And like, my book reviews do really good, so obviously I'm gonna continue with that, and I like to do it. I like to read, so it's been really fun, and it never would have happened if I hadn't have gotten fired clear back in June. So then the next big life thing that happened a couple months later is that I got married. Yep, officially married now. And so that was a wee bit stressful, to say the least, because, like, not necessarily like, oh my god, I have cold feet about marrying him, but more so just weddings are stressful in and of themselves. But yeah, so we got married. I still haven't gotten the official photos or video back. I'm like, sometime in January I'm gonna message him and be like, do I ever get anything for like the thousands of dollars I paid you? Ever? Because that'd be kind of cool. Like, I'm in a few wedding groups, and you're supposed to wait a long time, but I feel like 6 months is plenty of time because I haven't heard anything back from them, so I hope I didn't get scammed. We'll see, because yeah, I'm a little nervous that I haven't heard literally anything back at all. There's been zero communication. And yeah, it's fun. Then I was able to publish my second novel, because having moved from having a full-time job to now doing creative things full-time gave me the opportunity to actually spend more time writing, and so I published my second novel. It's 8 years in the works. It took forever to get this book done. Imposter syndrome is real, and honestly, thanks to TikTok and the authors on there, I've realized that it's like, you know what? The median of the worst book written and the highest book written, you know, like the top sellers that you hear about all the time, there's a huge gap between those, that a lot of authors are successful. They pay their bills and they have a fan base, and they're perfectly content doing that, and it doesn't have to be the world's greatest thing ever written. It doesn't need to change the world. Also, sorry if you hear noises upstairs. My husband's getting him some food. But it was such a huge thing to just be like, you know what? It doesn't have to be good. It's just telling a story. And is it the best story? No, but that's fine. And so I am very excited that I finally got that book done. It was one of those that it's like, once you finally do that, you're kind of over the threshold of like what's been holding you back. I'm working on book 3, and that'll be the end, and I'm never doing a series again because I really hate writing series. And so I'm just gonna conclude that, be done, and then I can finally move on to all of the other books that I want to write. So then the next major milestone from this year was that I finally completed Inner Temple of Witchcraft. That was huge. I've been working on that for several years, and I finally completed it, and now I'm working through Outer Temple of Witchcraft, which again, if you don't know, is over on my Patreon. I talk about that a couple times a month-ish. It depends. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. Typically there will always be at least 2 a month, but as I fall behind, sometimes there's more per month and sometimes less. It just kind of depends on what the month holds. But regardless, I finally completed Inner Temple of Witchcraft, and honestly, I use a lot of the techniques in my craft often, which I really didn't anticipate that happening, but I really love his techniques. And even Outer Temple of Witchcraft, there's a few things already that I've just been like, yep, that works real good. Putting that into the daily use. The other thing that I'm very excited about is that I started to write my own witchcraft book. Now, whenever people say they're writing a witchcraft book, if you're new here, typically you're thinking like your beginner books, you know? And for once, no. I went down the very dark and morbid path of death. So I am working on my witchcraft death book, and it goes over a lot of different things. Currently, it's outlined for about 55-ish chapters, and I have 8 parts. I've got part 1 written, working on part 2 right now, and I'll be posting about that obviously sporadically as I go over the next year, and planning on getting that published next year. But I started that journey this year, and I feel like having read so many witchy books this year that it allowed me to really figure out what I liked and didn't like in books, and how I wanted to go about the topic, and then how to kind of just rework it. And I think I never would have gotten to that point had I not read so much, and I'm hoping next year the same logic applies for fiction. I'm feeling like it's going to give me more confidence to write fiction books if I read more fiction books, because again, witchcraft books, it worked really well to transition into how I want to write my own, having read so many. What did I like? What did I not? How do I want to present my information? Yada, yada, yada. So seeing that, I'm like, okay, we got this. It'll be fine for next year. The idea of read a lot and write a lot applies to witchcraft as well. But yeah, so I started on that book, and I'm planning on publishing sometime in 2023. As for the time, I don't have an exact date yet. So towards the end of the year, I did realize something, and I've been working on it a lot from like mid-November to now, and that was recognizing burnout, because it's really important if you can catch it early and do something about it. And I was seeing the signs of burnout really fast because I've realized that while I do enjoy making videos and doing my content that I'm doing and doing this full time, I needed to cut back because I would hit a wall fast. And so I started to create a plan of how I wanted to do that, what was important to me, and recognizing like I am in burnout. I need to do something different. And so for me it was like, okay, maybe we need to step back a little bit. But I didn't want to do too much, because then it's like, oh god, we can't go all the way backwards. So I kind of settled on a new plan, and I'll be talking a lot more about that in a video in a couple days from now. But I started to recognize the burnout, where it was like, I would grab a new book and I'm like, oh my god, it's so big, it's gonna take forever, it's all I'm gonna do today. Because some of the books I can get up after I get my husband to work and I can read it, and then by 8 or 9 in the morning, like I've had quite a few hours. He goes to work really early. So by then I'll have time to have read the book, because most of them, if you sit down for a day, you can complete them. If you're a decently fast reader, I read pretty quick. And of course, the more you read, the easier it gets. And so me, my reading speed, most of these books I can read in a day. Some take a couple days, but for the most part, it's a day. And so I was like, okay, maybe spending every single morning reading an entirely new book, taking a bunch of notes, and, you know, trying to figure out, am I going to make an extended discussion post for this or am I not? What do I like about it? What do I not? I just got myself burnt out on the entire process, let alone seeing how my other videos would do on the channel and being like, okay, well that was a flop, that wasn't, every single day, and getting really obsessed with the numbers. And I could just see burnout in the horizon. I was focusing too hard, and I needed to step back and bring a little bit more balance into my life. And so it was really important to notice that really early, because I've seen burnout and I hit it often. Like every job within 6 months, I usually hit burnout. And the fact that doing this creatively, I could see the burnout wall and avoid it was key. Because I want to keep doing this. This is still fun, but it is also a job. Like, I treat it as a job. It's stuff I have to do before I can do anything fun. The next thing, as we're getting very close to the end of the year stuff now, was with the 13 gods that I've been honoring for the 13 days of Yule, I've realized with the Norse gods in particular, the gods and goddesses, they tend to not fit into a box. If you try to tell the Norse gods that, like, this would be really convenient for you to fit into this spot, they, like, take it as a challenge to say no. For example, most people would think of Sol, the goddess of the sun, would be fantastic for the solstice. I realized no, in fact not. She does not appreciate that from me, and I think it's a case-by-case scenario. I'm really big on UPG. I think everything is UPG to some degree. Just a lot of people agreed to it back in the day. And so, like, for me, I don't mind being like, yeah, you know what, didn't work for me, that's fine, we're gonna adjust it. Other people, like even my husband, it worked fine for him. I'm like, interesting. But yeah, like I've just learned that if I think of the Norse gods fitting into a pretty little box, and like this is a really good thing to be like, yeah, this is where I feel like you would fit logically. They like take it as a personal challenge. Like, no. And I've learned that a lot for the past 13, well, I guess right now as of recording it, I'm on day 9 of it. So like, we're over the halfway point. And the final thing of 2022 is that I have read over 50 books just on witchcraft this year. That is a lot of books. And I still have shelves of unread, and I want to buy a bunch of new ones this year. I'm planning to budget to at least get a few books a month, and it might take a couple months, but as like we get our rings paid off and different loans are paid off, we'll have more money, and of course more patrons and selling my books and stuff. That also brings in revenue so I can get more like recent books. Like Deborah Blake has a new one coming out very soon that I want to grab. And like there's new books that Llewellyn's got, like a whole new series that I want to grab. But still, this year, reading over 50 books first of all. Second of all, 50 plus witchcraft books. I think I'm somewhere in the 70s. I have to recheck my numbers because I initially had it written down when I wrote down my notes of what I wanted to talk about in this video, and then I realized, like, whoops-a-daisies, I didn't read all the books that I planned. Like, if you watched my December TBR, yep, didn't do it. I didn't hit all the books. But honestly, between a family emergency where I was gone for a week, sick for a week, then it's Yule, then I'm sick again, that's why you're seeing this exact setup for, like, the rest of the week, because it's day 1. I can still talk. My throat isn't completely on fire. I don't feel like trash. So I'm like, today is recording day. All the recording for the rest of the week is done, and then I can edit as I sit on the couch under my new Halloween blankie from my husband and edit because I know I'm gonna be sick. And I don't like to record when I'm sick because it's a lot more editing to constantly have to cut yourself off because you sneezed or you coughed. Anyways, back to the point. I cannot believe that I read so many books this year. I'm actually going to have a full video talking about all of the books I read, and then the poor editing me is going to have the task of putting all of the links in the description for every single book review. It's going to be a magical time, because at the same time I'm also going to check and make sure it's in my playlist of book reviews, because I often forget to add it, and then I'll go through like every couple months and then be like, oh crap, where did I leave off? And then have to go and add them. I'm going to try and do better next year, but we'll see. But yeah, so anyways, that is going to be it for my discussion of all of the stuff for 2022. And over on my Patreon, I'm going to have a more complete life goals update thing for 2023 of stuff I want to accomplish over there, so make sure to look out for that. And on the topic, thank you to my patrons. I'll have their names here on the screen. If you'd like to support me and get access to exclusive content, such as that video, it will be available in the link down below. Make sure to like and subscribe. I post every single day until the end of the year. And until tomorrow, thank you so much for watching, and bless be.